All right. Thank you very much, Awel. And I'd just like us to take a minute. I know where everyone is where they are, but Awel, at least between me and you, let's take a minute and put our hands together for this impressive founders circle. You know. I know you can't. If we're in a room full of an audience of 50,000 people, the rapturous clap that would go on to recognize all the work that these guys have done. And I just was sitting here taking it all in, and for me, that's the validation we need as Young Africa when I hear all the founders in there and all the work that they're doing. I can go to bed comfortable knowing that Africa is secured, especially by its young generation. So I'd just like to also take this opportunity to thank and congratulate Leo Africa Institute for putting on such an important gathering, especially now during a crisis where, and I've heard so many people say we're beyond the crisis, which is also the theme, but I'd just like to reinforce that we're still in the midst of COVID and it's not yet away, so we're still living with the implications of that. So it's very important for us to stay safe. To the founders on the panel, congratulations on all the work you're doing. I'm really intimidated to be speaking to you, and thank you all for setting me up. And I think for me, we can say a lot about my own story, but all I'm asking for from the panel is feedback on what we can do better, what we should continue doing and what we should stop doing. And my inbox is also available for you to share that. So before I go into my own story and the story of the Innovation Village, I'd like to also take this opportunity to recognize everyone that's behind the success or story that the Innovation Village is. I'm recognizing the people who joined us first and they couldn't bear me anymore and they had to run away. I'm recognizing the people who are currently with the village. We currently have about 80 staff, and also the people that are yet to join that we're trying to convince to be part of this story. But more specifically, on this call, I want to recognize people like Maria Chamlave. She was probably my first person that we worked with when we were starting the Innovation Village. And then, of course, she moved on, and you've heard for yourself all the amazing things she's done. And also worked with Shali Kandabu, amazing experiences. And of course, like you've heard, our dreams were too small for her. And you've seen how far she's been able to go. So for me, my story is, I don't know, sometimes when I'm trying to explain it, and I put up a few slides just to give context to everybody in the room, because it's so much, and I'm asked to do this in 10 minutes. But so I needed to put context in what I see, where we're coming from, where we're going, and what opportunities are there for other founders out there. And I like to say it's a 10-year journey, and we're just in year 3.5, year 4. So most of the time people judge us through results, and yet we're out here to do, 10-year. We have a 10-year vision for what we're trying to achieve. So I like to say that when I built the village, the first presentation I made was on January 14, 2016. And the one thing that has remained since since that day I made that first presentation is my name and the name of the village. Everything else has had to change, day one. And from that day to this day, it's probably been a 26-hour day job, 8 days a week, trying to bring these aspirations to life. But something that keeps context for me in this journey is that slide that I put up there. I don't know if any of you have seen that presentation, that newspaper article from the New Vision. that says Ugandan startups come of age, raise $600 million. If you haven't seen it yet, it's because it's not been written yet. It's just a reflection of what keeps us up in terms of the opportunities that we believe we can achieve for entrepreneurs. And for me, it's when I think about that, I say, is it all a dream? Is it possible? But then when you look at what's happening across Africa, in Lagos, in Nairobi, and everywhere else, these things are happening. I'm sure you've seen about Serenjoji's cheaper cash. You've seen about Stripe. So, and I keep telling people that for every entrepreneur in each of these countries, I can show you a Ugandan entrepreneur who is struggling because of one or two things that the ecosystem is made of. So the current ecosystem that we are operating in, and I'm going to get into the story, but this is just for context, and I know we don't have a lot of time. The current ecosystem and why we built the village is we see so many initiatives that run. Government is doing a couple of initiatives to support entrepreneurs. The regulators are also rolling out a couple of things. Some may hurt the entrepreneur, others are good for the entrepreneur. Many startups, they come and they die as soon as most of them come. And we have mentors like most of you on the Founders Circle, and universities. I know Makerere has an incubation hub, and so many corporations. You might have seen Standard Bank, Stanbic Bank, also building incubators. So much is happening, but a lot of it is not coordinated or speaking to each other. And which reminds me of last December visit I had to Silicon Valley. I met an incubator there, I won't mention their name, but all they do is pick up 20 entrepreneurs every year, invest $100,000 in each, incubate them for 6 months. At the end of the 6 months, about 400 investors turn up, and these 20 walk away with anywhere between $1 to $5 million. Now, this story has never happened anywhere in Africa. So, I mean, why? And yet we are the most entrepreneurial country in the world. So a lot of the village story and my story is trying to begin to answer that question. So what the village has done and what we've literally been trying to do is, in this ecosystem of unconnected but ongoing activity, how do we build a path for the entrepreneur such that they can start, they can grow, they can expand their venture? And really for me, the story, my own story, starts in 2014, where I started to get on board with trying to answer that question. So many stories, so many reflections, but things like, I remember I used to be part of a panel of judges, and they bring together over 100 entrepreneurs who are applying for a competition, and then they select the top 3, give them $5,000, $3,000, $1,000, not enough for anyone to do anything. So this guy's going to buy an iPhone X, a laptop, wait for the next competition. And yet the promise of entrepreneurship is really rewarding. So that was about 2010. And then I remember I said, to hell with all of this entrepreneurship stuff. I got a very awesome job with Umeme, largest utility company. I was their head of talent. But then on the fateful day in 2014, I picked up a newspaper article, and we're still supporting entrepreneurs the same way. So that's when I registered my first company that stands for Innovation Drives Entrepreneurship and Achievement. And I hit the road, came to where we're currently located, set up a space. But I like to say, the part I forgot is that I didn't have $100 million, to invest in every entrepreneur that walks through the door. I'm not exactly sure how I forgot that part. but we didn't. And then we struggled with we struggled with business models. We struggled with how do you build a self-sustaining innovation ecosystem or hub across Africa, and yet there's none out there. And the reason there's none, like I explained earlier, is because of that early ecosystem. So those were really, really dark days, I call them the trough of sorrow, where you doubt yourself. And as a founder, the hardest part is not when others doubt you. It's where you also doubt what you're trying to do. A number of the founders on the call, I've had such conversations with them. And, yesterday I was meeting other founders and they were saying, do we really have to do this? But that's the story. And then I came to a realization that if you're trying to do something that's not been done out there, the struggle is the path. So for me, 2016, we used to open Innovation Village at 10 a.m. and then close the space at no people. And every time I used to have a friend or a big corporate visiting, I remember I used to call Maria or someone else and say, so I have this CEO coming. Do you think we can organize entrepreneurs to come and just sit in the space such that it looks like we're doing something and we're busy? And then some entrepreneurs come, they sit, and that's really literally the struggle. So 2016, difficult journeys. And then 2017, we began to understand what are the gaps, what are the opportunities. And in there, I quickly learned that we cannot define ourselves as an incubator because there's none across Africa that's successful, that's doing it. We also can't define ourselves as an accelerator because they're literally not accelerating the way the guy I met in Silicon Valley is. So I said, so what do we do? And then I quickly discovered that you can't build an incubator or an accelerator in an early ecosystem. But again, if you decide to be an incubator, no one is going to build the other things that you need to be able to work with entrepreneurs. And unfortunately, you can't leave it to hope that let me build my incubator and somehow investors will come and somehow government will pick up the right policies and somehow things will begin to work. You just can't leave anything to hope in this entrepreneurship journey. And that's how I began coming up with ideas like, okay, so for an ecosystem, we need to have investors. So we built Kampala Angel Investors Network to attract local investors. We need to have, and that's how we also ended up building our innovation fund, the 97 fund. And then you need to have strong relations with private sector. That's how we built, the bureau, and then that turned into Future Lab. You need to have all of these things. And unfortunately, no one is going to do that for you if you aim to have success. So when we hit that realization, we get into 2018, built a number of vehicles, expanded the space, built the bureau, and we somehow came up with a business model that validated that there is hope in what we're trying to do. And, the business model is what helped us enable to scale because we could deliver impact, but also build a business as we look to deliver the impact. And then, of course, things started to work out, 26 hours a day, things started to work out. We began to, bring in entrepreneurs, run programs, and attract strategic partners. We started attracting strategic partners from the entire ecosystem, from the private sector, from international agencies. And I'd also like to appreciate the partners who decided to believe in us, especially when there was nothing, to believe in. So that was about 2018. 2018, we partnered up with, people like the UN, and we also partnered up with, MasterCard Foundation, who looked at the model and they laughed at us and they said, we see this, we like it, we don't know if it will become anything. And so let's see where you can take it. And I'm happy today we're really scaling across the country to explore what we can do for entrepreneurs. So right now, I know we don't have a lot of time. That's a chart that we are very clear about how we work with entrepreneurs, from students to startups, to growth stage entrepreneurs, to corporate entities, and to organize that broken ecosystem, we've built a sustainable business model around designing programs for innovation, around the Future Lab, and around building communities for entrepreneurs. And so, for example, this year, I'm very humbled that for the very first time, we can actually invest in entrepreneurs. So we invested about $100,000 in our first 10 startups, but also an entrepreneur who comes through our programs is able to secure investment as a result of the program. So if you ask me right now, the innovation village that we started, where it is, it's a very painful journey, I like to say, but it's a very delightful journey that has taken a very good shape. We're clear about what we're here to do. We're clear that we work with corporates and we know what we do with them. We're clear that we work with investors through the 97 Fund and the Kampala Angel Investors Network. We're clear that this Future Lab, which works with the industry, and that story can be told on one slide like it is, and where everybody fits into that story. But I think for me, the hardest part has been, and those are the spaces I'm sure you saw, the hardest part or the most interesting part has been that, you must be willing to be misunderstood for a very long period of time. And I'll give you an example. As a founder, there are things you struggle with. You absolutely have no idea because you also don't have the answers. But then everybody is looking for you and at you for the answers. And I mean, things are changing fast. You need to be sustainable. You need to build a team. You need to make sure you're looking after that team. So imagine being asked questions that you're supposed to know and you absolutely have no idea about. So I've learned that we have to remain comfortable with not knowing, with not being sure, and still stay the course, trusting the process and the struggle, like I said, is the path. And, it's easy to say you're not being understood, but, that goes for the people you work with, your own staff, I've had my staff walk up to me and they say, you know what, CK, I don't think you understand what you're doing. Let's show you how it's done, But it's in those moments of decision, it's in those moments of not being, of not giving up that, progress begins to happen. As I wind up, I think for me, one of the most important things that happened to me on this journey and in building the ecosystem really is the realization of what they call the S-curve or the growth curve. It's really that we all begin from zero. No one begins from zero. We all begin from some point, and then we build to milestone 1, and then to milestone 2, milestone 3, milestone 4. So you must, and I must be able to reinvent myself every time you hit that milestone. So that means the things you used to do at milestone 1 are no longer the things you do now. I mean, my auditors at milestone 1 was Shafiq and Shafiq, like I like to say. Now the auditors, because of the scale you're looking at, have to be KPMG. And that transformation is painful, it's brutal, but I've come to understand that growth and pain don't exist in the same bracket. So the founders here, again, thank you very much for allowing to give me feedback, and I'd like to thank you for all the work that you're doing. The Innovation Village now is that platform open to everybody who wants to collaborate, and I'm happy it's not just about the Innovation Village. We're also collaborating with other innovation hubs like Outbox, like High Collab, like Design Hub, and everybody else in the ecosystem to build one ecosystem together. So I'll just like to pause here because of time. I probably have overshot, but thank you very much for listening to me. And if you're an entrepreneur listening to this, as an entrepreneur, I'd like to reaffirm that it might be hard, but that is the process. And it might be hard, but no one can defeat the person who refuses to give up. So don't give up, because you're the ones we've been waiting for. Thank you very much.